Chicago has decided to, let's just say, abuse charitable organizations by asking the church to start taking in the migrants, which, by the way, on the surface does seem like a good thing. But when you actually look into it, it's really just fleecing people who, quite frankly, have good hearts. You also have this issue of Venezuelans heading back to Venezuela and going to other cities across the country, possibly right back to the South and, of course, the Southwest. And now you've got the city is now faced with a lawsuit over all of this. And this right here also includes the situation involving one of the brick and mortar facilities that, of course, is being built on ground that is not, let's just say, feasible for people to stay at. But we will cover all that in this video here. But one more thing, too. I'm not surprised that the mayor of Chicago would say this.
Well, there has to be better coordination. You know, what we've seen is a very raggedy form instituted by right-wing extremism. Everyone knows that the right-wing extremism.
But let's just go ahead and blame the right for calling it out for what it is. So, guys, there are two videos coming out today to go along with the video that I'm releasing earlier at 2 p.m. Of course, that video is about the situation in Europe. I wanted to wait a little while before I talked about the Ireland situation because we've also got riots in France. We've also got riots in Spain. Of course, it's all over immigration. And let's not forget England, who is briefly mentioned there as well as Conor McGregor's little, let's just say the little issue that he's having with the Irish government, which, of course, that's going to be covered in the first video of the day. This video right here will also be followed up by a video on the NYPD and their situation involving the resignation of 2,500 officers over the course of a year. And I'm pretty sure it's coming to Chicago, too. So when you have resignations of police departments and overall budget cuts and you have a migrant crisis, things are about to get a little bit hairy. Now, I have to say hairy because obviously I can't think of another word to get by the YouTube algorithm and their censors. And of course, they always love to limit ads when you tell the truth about the situation. But hey, it is what it is. It comes with the job. So what's going on with the city of Chicago? So as most of you know, winter is coming. Winter in a lot of ways is already there. The temperature is already down. And of course, they're expecting to get obviously a lot worse as well, especially when you get into December, January, and February, of course, which is universally the coldest month in the nation as a whole. So what are you looking at? You're looking at a bunch of migrants, some of which who I've covered previously before, want to head back to Venezuela. Some of them, of course, want to head back to South America as a whole. And some of these people want to abuse this opportunity to head down south and give people who live in southern big cities the same exact type of problems that they're experiencing up north. Now, the way I'm talking when I say problems, I'm not talking about the people themselves. I'm talking about the situation because the situation obviously calls for the taxpayer to kick in a lot more money, of which the taxpayer should not be forced to kick in. And now that they've expended beyond the blue cities as far as their taxpayers are concerned, the people who voted for this crap, they are now looking to those who live in states that did not want this stuff, nor did they actually vote for it. Kind of shady if you ask me, and of course Chicago now has a true believer as a mayor, as the actual mayor of the city now, and of course things are getting worse, from crime to food deserts and now immigration issues, and of course also the church is now being, well, I say this, they're saying that they're volunteering their services, but we all know what the hell is really and truly going on. They were probably begged to do so because the church can only do but so much. But I want to start with this lawsuit that's being filed, especially given the fact that the city of Chicago is building one of these brick and mortar centers, which almost feel like detention centers in a lot of ways, which is funny because the left claimed that the border was a detention center, but now the migrants who are coming in are basically going to be living in exactly what it was they had to cross, a detention center. Very weird, very ironic, but we will cover that after this here.
Protesters, most of them residents of Brighton Park, came out once again today to speak up against the city's plans to erect a winterized base camp for migrants at this vacant lot at 38th Street in California, construction on which, according to a letter Saturday from 12th Ward Alderwoman Julia Ramirez, will begin tomorrow. This in spite of soil tests showing the land is contaminated with toxic metals.
A while back, they tried to put a playground. They couldn't. They tried to put a school. They couldn't. People did background histories on this site. It was contaminated because it was a railroad track disposal.
For nearly 6 weeks now, a small contingent of residents has been out nearly every day to express their displeasure at the proposed camp, which they believe would drain already limited resources from those who live here.
You got veterans out there, you got homeless. Why don't you take care of our people before anybody else?
News that the soil is polluted has only heightened residents' opposition, some saying they don't trust that adequate remediation has been done.
They should release the environmental report to the public so we know how toxic this land is, and they said they fixed it. It's by laying a thin layer of little stone that you put on your garden, okay? That's their fix.
The winterized base camps, which would look something like these already erected in New York, would temporarily house up to 2,000 migrants, many of whom have been living at airports and at police stations around the city. In her letter to residents announcing the impending construction, Alderwoman Ramirez reiterated her opposition, saying in part, "It is essential for residents of this community to be fully aware of the environmental impacts and potential risks associated with this project. We have a right to know if the site is safe for both asylum seekers and community members at large." While the mayor's office has not directly confirmed their plans to begin construction tomorrow, they have in previous statements made it clear that once started, they could be up and running within days.
Say this right now, based upon the court makeup in the city of Chicago, and of course the court makeup in the state of Illinois, I don't see how this will actually help. If anything, it's just bringing more and more and more awareness. And of course, as I've talked about before, in these situations, communities typically tend to get a little bit jealous, especially given the fact that they now have people that, quite frankly, they don't know the backgrounds of, they don't know where they came from. They have no idea what they did in their past, floating around. And as I'll be talking about later on with the city of New York and their situation, Chicago is more than likely to be experiencing the same exact thing. As a matter of fact, I think Chicago's situation will be a lot worse because Chicago is a little bit more woke in its overall environment, overall voter base. But still, at the same time, when you've got people who got here before July the 21st now getting the benefits that, quite frankly, other people think that they should be getting, it's going to breed the jealousy that I talk about. And, of course, crime is going to pick up. Now, normally during the wintertime, and by the way, speaking of crime, over 30 dead or 30 shot in the city of Chicago over Thanksgiving weekend. Kind of a thing. And I understand that's a little bit lower than other numbers that have came out in the city of Chicago as far as shootings is concerned, especially given the fact that it's typically the summer where the crime is really its worst. But still at the same time, these people probably did not need to get shot. Then again, I can already hear somebody saying that obviously somebody screwed up, somebody obviously attacked somebody. Maybe it was self-defense. Given the fact that Chicago has extremely strict Second Amendment laws, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a good old-fashioned crime and the murders that always happen in that city anyways. But back to the story. When you are in this situation and you start doing budget cuts, and then next thing you know, you're starting to ask other people at the church to start getting involved. Next thing you know, it creates in a situation where nobody is actually happy. Yes, people are happy to step in and help out, but after a while, they are going to begin to understand that their taxpayer dollars, which, by the way, the church is not getting anything for because, quite frankly, they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. People will eventually get frustrated and not want to do, especially given the situation and the overall political situation as a whole. As I've said on several occasions, the best thing that could happen is these people go back across the border wall gets built, but obviously we have an administration that's not going to do that. So yeah, this is the situation that these people, quite frankly, voted for. And as I've covered in other videos, a lot of the Venezuelans have gotten a little bit upset about their current living conditions. And given the fact that the area that they're building one of these shelters on is an area that has, let's just say, the ground itself is highly questionable. It's very dangerous. All kinds of chemicals in that area that have been spilled. There's an old construction area. A lot of very, very bad things that you don't need to be exposed to over a long period of time. This fire could come back to bite the city in the ass. And it could also bite the country in the ass too, because who's to say that they don't get an attorney years later after diseases start popping up, that they don't then decide to sue the country over the situation, which would actually be actually kind of funny, especially given the fact that they're the ones who made the trek. Now, I understand people making the trek in steamship coming across to the United States to start a life. I'm all for that, okay? Do it the legal way, go right ahead and do it. But here's the problem, though. The United States in the year 2023 versus the year 1823, or even the year 1923, or even the year 1953, was nowhere near as large of a welfare state. Back to those cops.
Yes, police are guarding the site, and you saw from Chopper 7 that gravel is being laid here at this empty lot at 38th in California. Two South Shore residents, in the meantime, appear virtually in front of a judge after filing a lawsuit against the city. They want to file an injunction to stop the city from using public spaces for migrant use. A lawsuit brought on by two South Shore residents, Natasha Dunn and Jimmy Darrell Jones, is intended to stop Mayor Brandon Johnson and the city of Chicago from housing migrants in public parks, police stations, so-called tent camps, and public schools, including South Shore High School. The case will now move on to another division of the court. In the meantime, gravel is being laid down at one of those future campsites, and equipment is arriving here at 38th in California, despite weeks of protests by residents here. We talked to one protester who asked us not to show her face to protect her identity.
I want to hear something too from the mayor, please, because we support him when he loading the office. He's supposed to think the community first.
People who live in the area say soil tests from the lot here in Brighton Park show the land is contaminated with toxic metals and is not safe, and they do not want the city to disrupt the area.
This land is get poisoned. They used to be a factory. They contaminated. It's not fit for the human to live. And the government tell us they will do the soil tax. What is the tax reserve? We don't see nothing.
If this legal action moves forward, it could prevent the mayor from disrupting park programs, violating zoning laws, and he would have to disclose fully how much money is being spent on supporting.
As you guys can see, the police departments are obviously diverting more overall resources to these areas. Yeah, the city of Chicago has so much crime, so many murders, that now we have to rely upon police departments to also work, let's just say, double and triple shifts. This is really what's going on in the city of New York, is that a lot of people are resigning over the fact that the current, let's just say, the current mayor, the current environment, the current police unions, the internal affairs offices, all that stuff there, they've kind of gone a little bit woke, and therefore with DAs being kind of woke, that also means that these police departments are not going to feel like their officers are being protected. When you factor this, when you put that into this entire equation, and then you factor in the migrant crisis, and then you eventually factor in the fact that there are budget cuts coming, sanitation cuts coming, which is going to make the situation definitely a lot worse. And then you factor in that these people are putting these little centers, these little migrant centers on areas that have got a lot of chemical issues, and they're also near neighborhoods where people have got other projects going on. Let me kind of explain this just very, very quickly. I can already hear somebody saying, F them kids, I understand that, but a lot of these neighborhoods have got little programs like, recreational baseball, recreational basketball, things that quite frankly need to be done to keep kids occupied so that way they don't turn into criminals. So especially given the fact that parents nowadays are not exactly doing a good job of raising their kids. A lot of these problems that I see, like the situation in Las Vegas and where they jumped this young guy, like 11 guys did for him, got arrested. A lot of this is done due to bad parenting. These people are not raising their kids the right way. And of course, it's not just families of color or families that are from nations outside the United States. It's also white parents too. I typically tend to hit everybody on this platform. It's just how I am. I will praise you when you do good work, and I will hit you when you do bad work. That's just the way that I am. The thing is this right here, though, this entire situation is screaming disaster. And I've been saying it for a long time that the next thing to happen would be that they would start making police budgetary cuts. Now, budgetary cuts are not as known in Chicago and haven't actually been seen here, but now that you've got people angry and they've been protesting for a while, you got to wonder what's coming next. And that next thing that was coming, of course, was the church getting involved, which is something that I completely and totally space, but also given the context of the situation, it makes 100% sense.
Winter weather settling in and more migrants arriving in Chicago every day. The city is launching a new initiative to shelter the most vulnerable indoors.
WGN's political reporter Taman Bradley is here with more on the mayor's latest plan.
Lourdes and Ray, good evening. With shelters packed and the winterized tent plan facing scrutiny, the Johnson administration is turning to Chicago's faith community to help ease the migrant crisis. Chicago houses of worship say they've already helped 400 migrant families in just 60 days. This week, a taste of the bitter cold in Chicago and a renewed sense of urgency to help unhoused migrants. Standing with faith leaders, Mayor Brandon Johnson announced a new partnership between the city and churches to care for new arrivals.
A diverse,
intergenerational, interracial, interfaith coalition of communities coming together to help those in need.
Backed by $350,000 in donations, 17 churches are set to house 20 migrants each.
We are going to make sure that we remove people out of police districts, women and children who are living on floors and sleeping outside, that we're going to create spaces that provide more dignity.
For a year and a half, the city has been scrambling to take care of more than 22,000 migrants who've arrived in Chicago. Faith leaders say they hope to build a vast network of churches new arrivals can turn to.
Our goal is to house. Our goal is to give hope. Our goal is to make sure that those who are coming feel welcomed and embraced.
The city's all-out push to shelter, feed, and resettle new arrivals has angered some longtime residents, forcing Mayor Johnson to defend his migrant policy.
What you're hearing from families is, how do we ensure that families who voted for their aspirations and hope, that those aspirations, those hopes don't get lost? And I get it.
About 1,100 migrants remain at Chicago police stations, with another 150 at O'Hare. That's down from a peak of about 3,800, but more and more people are coming to Chicago. Ray and Lourdes, 7 more buses were expected today.
Kansas City, you got people defecating on the streets. That right there is coming next in the city of Chicago. We typically tend to think of San Francisco and LA as the 2 poop capitals of the nation, but I'm pretty sure Chicago is next. I'm pretty sure that New York is not too far behind. By the way, they had this situation in Oregon a while back where homeless people were allowed to camp in the front yards of people's houses right there on the little ledge that leads into the driveway. And of course, the people who are living in those areas had no legal recourse. They couldn't actually, sue over this. Like I said, you get what you vote for. But here's the thing about the church, and I understand the goodness of people's hearts, and quite frankly, I'm all in favor of that, which, by the way, is something that a lot of people love to hit Christians over by saying, oh, they're all a bunch of judgmental pricks, and they want a Christian nation and a nationalized religion. Look, truth be told is, when you say America's a Christian nation, we say that because roughly over 60% of the country is Christian or Catholic. Okay, just figured I'd go ahead and point that out. There's the real reason why. You can fight me in the comment section for all I care. But this is where it goes to prove that the church is obviously still very, very much a good institution that does in fact care. I don't exactly fully agree with them on this because they're going to be overloading their churches, taking these people in, and then after a while, the congregations, the fellowships are going to begin to get a little bit upset about the situation, and they're going to see that the money that they put in the collection plate is not going to missionaries that quite frankly they're supposed to support, or it's not going to pay the bills or whatnot to actually keep the church running, to keep it operable on Sundays and Wednesdays. But now they're seeing that immigrants are going to be taking over, and now that the resources are going to be diverted to that location. Then again, though, at the same time, though, if people stop going and they start going to church online, or they start Googling certain ministers that, quite frankly, after a while, YouTube's going to want to get rid of, they may find out that the woke stuff that they've been going to, because it's very, very prevalent in these very, very large cities, they may find out that they were wrong for ever going to these institutions, especially given the fact that the churches have gone woke, whereas your online pastors, on the other hand, have not gone woke at all, and they're actually speaking about the issues. Fact of the matter is that people who've been trying to demonize the church for a very long time are seeing the church do the right thing in this situation as far as they are concerned, but they're also seeing their government do the completely, totally wrong thing here. And of course, this right here goes back to what I've always said about the infected, is that they are freeloaders. Freeloading SOBs. I say infected, not classical liberals. I am trying to distinguish that there is a difference between the two. Mayor Brandon Johnson is a true believer. He is a true believer in the cause. He's a true believer in the left, where Lori Lightfoot preached the left-wing wokeness type stuff. But then, of course, when she left the office of mayor, she went out and did speeches and did little events where she said Pookie and Ray Ray needed to be locked up for forever. And of course, this right here kind of hit her in a lot of negative lights, especially when it comes to woke circles. Brandon Johnson, on the other hand, 100% absolutely woke, true believer in everything that's going on. He really and truly is one of those weak beta males who believes that people who riot are just hungry. He's one of these people who really and truly believe that people who steal are just hungry. He really and truly believes that the person who shot somebody in cold blood was justified because the other person said something to him earlier that day. This right here is the kind of person that Brandon Johnson is. And of course, the food deserts go to prove that he's all about the freeloading environment. And now the fact that they are now begging and asking the church to get involved and now suddenly praising the church simply amplifies this a lot more. that these people are in fact freeloaders. They'll praise you today, they'll hit you tomorrow, because once you get to tomorrow and you realize that the place that you're sucking off of has nothing else left to suck, guess what happens? After a while, they start to see that, man, you can't provide for me anymore, so I guess you're no use, because the vast majority of these people do not want to provide for themselves. That's the truth of the situation. And of course, with winter coming in, the situation is obviously going to get a lot worse. And as you're about to find out in New York with the new, let's just say that you find out the officers are leaving the force and walking away. Yeah, things are about to get a lot worse. With that right there being said, guys, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. And to the infected, make sure you guys understand that you voted for this nightmare. You asked for it, and now you are officially getting it. To that right there, to the left-wingers out there, piss off.